Oh, welcome to episode 9 of Primary Target. I'm your host, Who the Fuck, joined by my co host, Vargren, and our special guest, uh, Valasius slash Baller Tom. Welcome to the show.
Hello, good to be hanging out with you guys.
Uh, Tell us a bit about your background in Eve, Val.
Yeah,
Who
sure.
who are you?
Who am I? I got a couple aliases. I originally started. I'm gonna say PvPing back in 2015 with a group, Gate Camping and Syndicate. I was I was the guy who would just clear the gate rats in a Vexer, being excited to kill a battleship worth 2 mil so I could buy a frigate. And eventually I wanted to do something more. I flew with them. If anybody knows like Trace Payne or Nate Hayward in a group called 13 Coils or Iberians, I used to group with them. And then I kind of wanted to do something on just a bigger scale. So I eventually left, and then I found a couple of really crappy corps. One of them was very much crap, known by or run by a guy named Bryce. The guy was horrible to fly with, and I hated his corp. So I didn't last long, and eventually got kicked. And then I found my way into a group called Poss Party by accident. And by then, I hadn't really done any kind of FCing. I actually only flew Logi, and my Guardian was like my safety blanket. I just it
Wow,
followed
you
it followed
hero.
me followed me everywhere. Like it just when I went up to Bryce's Corp, when I was in 13 Coils, I was a Logi. I Excor Augur, flew it all the time, and then eventually went into a Guardian. I thought it was the coolest ship, so I was only flying Logi for a substantial part of everything. And then as time went on with Poss Party, is I'm just kind of a person who has initiative and just wants to get out there and do things, and I really enjoy kind of having risk and responsibility on me, because that it means when you kind of defeat the odds, it's that much more satisfying because you took all the risk yourself. So
Yeah.
eventually I kind of naturally moved on to FCing as I started making calls in just nano gangs and small gang fights. It just kind of extends from there.
I'm
So
curious. How did you
yeah.
accidentally end up in Pause Party?
Um, I mean, maybe it was a kind of a poor choice of words. I think I found some recruitment ad, or maybe it was like
Oh,
on the
okay.
Reddit Eve jobs thing. So I just kind of fell into something.
Gotcha. Okay.
I wanted to do something new,
Oh, you just cut
so
out.
I kind of just stumbled on it. Am I back?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
Okay, I think my computer just slowed down for a second, but I think the safest thing to say is that I kind of just fell into the group. I found an advert or I found it on Reddit, and I just wanted to do something new. So I stumbled on it. They almost didn't accept me, but when I told them I had a guardian, they were like, "Bring him in,"
Ooh.
because like
Ooh, he's a
then,
logic pilot.
back then, for Wormhole Corps, it's very much so a high standard that you need to have a scanning or the ability to fly a buzzard, have a Cobop's cloak. I didn't even have that. So I joined, I
Wow.
brought in my Guardian, I brought in my Vexer, and I brought in my Harpy. And I would just be that weird new guy just flying around the chain, roaming in like a Harpy or a Hawk or a Vexer. Because that's what you do when you're low sec or no sec. When you want to fight, you go. You just go out and roam the chain. So I'd be that weird guy in a C6 black hole and a Vexer, just looking to bring solo back.
Just ever hopeful.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, and then within my first week, I got a decloak on a Stratios, and I scrammed him in my Harpy, and I felt like such a
Oh,
playmaker.
vindicated.
Yeah, so that was the actually no, the first impression uh, I got is on my first day in that wormhole. We lived in a wormhole called Phoenix. It was a C2, and on my first day in, and a neutral orca warps to the high sec wormhole, and I'm just kind of stunned. I look at this thing for a minute, like an actual minute. I look at it, and he's just like coming out of warp, and I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know if it's ours, if it's friendly. I don't know the concept of standings. So I just look at this thing, and he just locks me up, and I'm just in like an Atron or something. He's locking me for like a minute due to orca lock times, and then he kills me, and I was just stunned. I didn't say anything. I eventually warp off to my pos because this was pre-citadels, and then I just link my loss and flee, and they were like, And people were like, "What's happening? What was this an orca in our wormhole?" I was just so stunned that I didn't have the ability to act.
Oh, it's amazing.
I
Oh,
think we can all sympathize with that on some level, like for real.
Oh, what a hero that orca pilot is, though. God damn.
Yeah,
Like,
that's in my lost mail somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. All right, so you joined Post Party with some
Mixed
events.
success.
Yeah, there were events. We'll say that. And then what? Then what happened?
Well, eventually I started making calls for Nano and Small Gang and just anything like that because I just when there's not anybody on, well the content's there, like let's go. Like that's just me. Like I don't sit around. I don't like to wait for things to happen. I just go. So eventually I just start seeing more and more and start gaining a little bit of more trust among the membership, and eventually that turned into me sort of kind of just doing more of the FCing because the FCs that were there, they did it, but I don't think they really had the kind of drive to want to be like the main FC or the guy always FCing. So that kind of just sort of naturally passed on to me because the people who were doing it, I don't think really wanted to. They just did it because they had to, and I wanted to
It's
do it.
rare. It's rare to find that kind of that drive to be the dude because it's a lot of pressure.
It is, and we'll get to it later. But that's eventually why I had to leave Pospey. But it, in the beginning, it definitely was definitely exciting to me, and when the weight is all on your shoulders to perform and to kind of make plays, it's that much more satisfying, and that feeling of when you just nail it is like I need that. So that's why I've kind of always been drawn to FCing. But eventually we moved out of that C2, and I'm glad we did because I was about to quit. I hated it because the high six static is silly, and we eventually find ourselves in a C4, and I became, I guess the nullsec equivalent of a middle deer. I was our term was the doctrine guy. You know, like there wasn't really anything, and
that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And we experimented with a lot of different stuff too. I remember I was at an Eve meetup with my great friend Croesus, and he was like, "Val, we had tried vultures. They're going to be the new thing." So we do it, and like an actual vulture fleet, and like it was a lot of fun. I remember I have some fond memories of sniping and killing TD scimitars at 150 kilometers. That's really cool, but against any kind of credible, well-formed fleet, it just like doesn't really work. You just don't have the damage.
I remember the flycatcher doctrine, and I was like stunned. I remember like seeing you bring that to catch as Val, and just being like, "There's 20 flycatchers in Victor 3," and I was like, "What'd you just say?" And they were like, "There's 20 flycatchers in Victor 3. They're all anchored up." What do you mean they're all anchored up? They're all anchored on one guy.
Bubble us to death? Like
who are they?
What?
Who are they anchored on? Some guy named Valasius, and I was like, "What?
Oh,
what?" Like. And
Yep,
then he explained it to me, and I was
another-
like, he explained it to me, and I was like, "Oh, it's genius."
Yeah, that was probably my favorite creation, and I want to give some context to people who have never had the chance to fight
please,
it. Is
background
that
us on this.
is that
Because
it's
everyone's
a
going,
Tenement flycatcher.
everyone's going,
Yeah,
what? Like,
yeah. Nobody gets it, which is part of the genius of it. Is that no one understands it, and that's what makes it engageable. So what it is, it's a 10 MN flycatcher with light missiles. With the fitting that you have on it, you can only do meta. So with a missile guidance computer with range and the max skill, you shoot around to like 80 kilometers. And the reason why you have to do a flycatcher over a jackdaw is that the speed of a jackdaw outside propulsion is pretty garbage. Like it's like what, like 1500? It just doesn't cut it, and it doesn't have the fitting for full light missiles and 10 MN. So the idea is you anchor up with 10 MN, you get full mine link on a Bifrost and a stork. Then you have then we went with scalpels because Kieran's couldn't really keep up, and that because the fact that it's 10 MN, the signature bonus of the scalpel leads it a little bit more appropriate for that kind of setting. And then we have a Carries and a Hyena, and then everybody else is just in like tackle, like subs, like Scepters and whatnot. And then when you kind of get moving, you're going at like 2500 MS, I think it was, with the 10 MN.
Yeah.
And you volley. I think the volley was around like 13 or 1400, which is a little bit more than a Tal War. So the idea is that you just keep straight lining, and nothing can really apply to you. Nothing can really hit you, including Caracals to an extent. You can definitely tank Caracals in that comp, which is the I think that really throws people off guard.
Yeah.
And then when people chase you, they chase into your bubbles. So their ships, they fly into your bubbles as you're kiting away from them, and then you're shooting them as they're going into your bubbles. And it's funny because you call, I need a bubble, then you see like 10 bubbles go off. And it's I've had very fond memories. We've tanked, carriers, supers in GE. We fought off Harpy fleets with it and won. We fought off 40-man goon gate camps. It is just it's a hilariously effective doctrine. I'm not saying it's going to be like a standard of anybody. I'm not saying it outperforms anything,
no,
but for what it does and its purpose of like getting fights against unorganized standing fleets and people who don't understand the capabilities of it, that's where it shined. And it was running that fleet was so fun.
It's such a cool concept and like super bizarre to fight against. I think both me and Who were there to see that one, at least the one engagement in GE, which was just so much fun to be on the other side of and trying to work out what the fuck was going on.
I think if I recall correctly, after that fight, you switched back over to Brave Comms, and you were like, "Behold my genius!" And I was like, "What just happened?"
That was amazing. And the only threat that doctrine really has is rail cormorants, because they can track outside your range, and newts and webs. Other than that, you don't care about anything else. You can tank drones, you can tank a reasonable number of jackdaws, you can tank caracals, any turret-based platform, as long as it's not like a Hecate or like a frigate with beams or any kind of railguns, you can tank pretty much everything just fine with it.
All right, we've got like super sidetracked here. We're still just literally doing your introduction. So,
I think it's going to go on like this for a little bit.
Yeah, probably. Kind of. I think the entire episode is just going to be introduction. All right, that's how it's going to work.
I'm on board. But all right, so and at some point during after we moved to C4 and POSB, I put a tune in Brave. I joined around near the end of Fade. Back when we and I say we because we all lived there, I think, at some point together in Fade, and we were like 6 jumps from Horde, and I was that guy who would just be in an Atron, and I would just be in standing fleet, and then like every 3 minutes there would be a new neutral coming in that I could tackle. So like it became a thing that everyone should just have Baller Tom on your watch list. That was my handle. So it's like I kind of grew a name for myself for like a tackle frigate in a tackle.
That sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, that is the story of Varg.
Yeah, I did it. I did it exactly the same way. It's kind of it's how you get noticed if you're that first guy.
I made a lot of money too. I probably made about 10 bill doing that.
Just looting's not bad, yeah.
Yep, there's a lot of marauders who like to fly back then.
If you catch those shiny things, yeah.
And then I kind of took a break post Fade when we were, I don't know if removed or kicked out or whatever it was, but kind of when we went to Cloud Ring after that, I just skipped that, and eventually catch happens and I moved on down there.
Can I ask why you put a tune in Brave?
I kind of just wanted to test the waters. I don't think I ever truly considered joining on Val, which is what I go by normally, but I kind of just wanted to test the waters. And what really got me kind of going in Brave is I saw the amount of daily fleets that would just come to Brave, especially down in Catch. Bless Goons for bringing fleets, sometimes daily, and
really sometimes hourly.
I was going to say we've all seen it actually come hourly at times, where it was at the kind of the peak Catch standing.
the funny part too is that when you'd beat one training FC, because they'd send their skirmish or training FCs over all the time, then you'd see some other guy who's slightly up the ladder being like, "Oh, we gotta put these brave people in their place," so they'll come with the exact same fleet comp and try to get a fight out of exactly what the previous guy just lost to.
Mm.
It's very nice. It's a really nice training ground as well for an FC, because when it's that kind of content coming so often, you get this wonderful thing that a defender gets, where you get to see what their fleet is and then choose your fleet as a counter to it, which is it's something that's kind of, it's really nice when you're getting started out FCing, when you can just kind of learn, like, hey, Caracals are quite good against a lot of this stuff that wants to brawl.
They're so good.
You know? Yeah.
Love me a character.
So you were like the tackle guy for Brave after kind of seeing all of this lovely content flowing in, and then what, you started FCing a bit there, I assume?
Definitely in Catch, never in Fade. In Catch, I started. I remember my first ping. There was the gate camp and head GP, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get some Caracals. And like I pinged. I got about 9 people in fleet. And we killed like a ship or 2 or something, and then we went back, and that was the fleet. But eventually, at this point, I'm going to say in my development as an FC, I was still very new. I very much so lacked experience. I didn't understand the concepts of trading, or how many MOAs, or how many ospreys do you need per MOA. I understand that. It's like you need about 3 ospreys.
The master fleet combat, basically. Yeah.
And I really didn't understand that at all. I understood it kind of just how to communicate and how do I put this? Kind of just how to be efficient, but I still didn't quite understand all the ins and outs to it. So
essentially, like, good combat awareness, but without kind of like a lot of the background knowledge.
Yeah, and a lot of that I want to attribute to my times playing both StarCraft and Tribes Ascend competitively. So like I had a really good understanding of being able to read a grid, being able to. I don't like using the word multitask because I think it's kind of a flawed word, and a lot of the times you have to do one task, immediately stop, then do another task, and then swap back and forth. You generally don't do them simultaneously ever. So I think that word is not used in good faith often. But I was still good at that idea, and eventually I keep pinging and more people kind of keep joining my fleets. And one of the more humble things that I will never forget is there was a saying, and it was never miss a baller fleet. And that was always something I truly never forgot.
Oh yeah, I can confirm. Ballaton fleets are the best fleets.
Then we're starting to but I'm gonna keep going because we can't not talk about the Tau Wars. Is that around this time in Wormhole Space 2, because I was, I'm gonna back up. I was dual corping, and I was public about it. I am a firm believer, as long as you're honest and acting in good faith, that it is an okay thing to do. There was a couple accidents that I made right, but for the most part, I don't believe I ever kind of acted in bad faith in dual corping.
Yeah, it never got boundaries never got overstepped. There was always kind of friendly relations maintained between the two. It was never like possibly and Brave were never likely to be kind of on the opposite sides of anything. Essentially, it was only ever going to be a bit of content generated on either side, which both alliances were looking for, I assume. So
yeah, and there was, even to an extent, on I hate using the word strat up level, but there was also times when we really helped some corps out. It wasn't DEQ, it was Bold. I think they had a C2 that was under siege by a combo of no, at the time it was just wholesale, but then they battled in Shekel and another wormhole corp called Whole Control at the time, and like I volunteer possibly to go into that mix on Brave side, and I FC their defense. So like it was a really strong relationship we had, and I never tried to mess with that because I was incredibly lucky and fortunate to have the trust that Brave gave me in dual corping.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put that in there, and I got to go into Tau Wars.
I was going to say, let's talk about Tau Wars, because I feel like some people who are listening may not appreciate when you first look at the Tau War, quite what an incredible weapon of mass destruction this spaceship is.
Yeah, it was. I want to say that first I was truly inspired by a video that Pando from Init put out on his YouTube about his snatch fleet. It was micro warp drive, kind of T3Ds with boosters and a couple deacons, spider tanks, and there was just like a surgical precisionness that he showed with bushing on getting exact angles, exact amounts of different ships to pick off. By that I mean bushing with the command destroyers, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to be that precise. So I did it in both Post Party with Afterburning Confessors with 1MN, and then in Brave I was like, I wanted to do something similar, but I didn't like the Cormorant because it's just, it doesn't destroy cruisers well enough, and what light missiles are an alpha doctrine. So the idea is I would always pre-ping every single roam I would do. I would scan for wormholes. If I didn't get anything, I'd just go straight to Horde. Doesn't matter the distance. And at that point, I think they were in Geminate then, and we would just get over to 20 jumps. And the concept behind the Tau Wars is that I would be in a Stork. I would have just a couple Tech 1 Logifrigs. I would put the cyber athletes, the most talented people, in interceptors or stickers. And I would have people who were well versed with boosters also bring theirs with just a couple links. And the idea is we would just, between the use of combat probing and boosting, is that I would set us up to get kills and without being under fire for too long. And it was just, there were some instances where we would do 3 bushes in under like 15 seconds, and all at different angles or different speeds, and to get to the precise positioning. And there would be times when we would be 2 hours in Horde space with a Cormorant fleet and a kitchen sink fleet chasing us, where we wouldn't lose a single ship doing this, just based off of the use of combat probes, bushing, and weapons from scepters. And we started out with about 15 people in Tau Wars, and we peaked at around 100 people, which is something that I was like shocked that I could ever pull off.
I was there for that. That was
incredible.
I feel like I was there for an awful lot of them. I can remember being on one that went on for so long that we had to get someone's pandemic horde to fill up on ammunition and fly us out a bunch of light missiles so the fleet could restock on ammo and we could keep killing stuff.
Yep, that happened. That was my ult. We ran out of ammo. We had to restock.
Yeah, that was I've never ever in 12 years of EVE Online, that's never happened to me before. That's an entirely unique experience. So yeah, that was a special moment. But frankly, as were almost all of these Tau War fleets.
Then CCB, they cut it, they gutted it with the bushing nerf, and that sucked. I hated it. I hated that they removed it. I never felt there was any balance issues whatsoever with maybe design issues. Maybe it's not what CCB would want to have intended to have the modules do in a fleet setting, but
true. But I mean,
the
counter to it, which I know happened to definitely happened to us once, at least once, is the kind of cloaky smart bombing T3Cs, like the Kino fit, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Which again just like completely wipes you out in seconds is hilarious to be on the other end of. So it's there are counters to all of these kind of things. But anyway, sorry, do continue. So the mighty Tau War.
Yep. So another thing that was I always tried to do to try and encourage good fleet numbers is that this was almost like an event that I would try and do. I would give a specific form up time, a specific departure time, and a specific I want to be done by this time. So people had really good expectations of where to be, what they need to do, and then I also tried to be incredibly social. Frankly with you guys too, but kind of just with everybody. So and everybody just always had fun, and something I always focused on was people having fun and not wasting their time. And
because that is the meta when you're talking about fleets, right? Like we talk about winning, we talk about losing, we talk about like different sort of fleet setups, we talk about like different concepts. But the meta really is if people are enjoying what they're doing, people are having fun, and you can continually do that for them, you're continually going to get numbers in your fleet.
And that's what I saw, is that this eventually became. I'm gonna, maybe this will sound like a bloated statement, but I would say that this fleet was like a phenomenon. Eventually, it was something that people made time out of their
Oh
day
yeah,
to show up for.
I can speak. That's absolutely true. Like both
Yeah.
me and who were in Brave during kind of peak baller Tal War time, I would say, and saw like some of these massive fleets go up, and yeah, it was like people would clear schedules, and I'd make sure I was there. You know,
People
I'd
who
have
would
my
never
stalk ready to go.
people who would never go on other fleets, people who would like only log in for like, strat ops, people who would only log in for like AT play, people who would only crab would go on these fleets that wouldn't necessarily go on fleets otherwise. And so it was very much a phenomenon.
And at that point, I think that's around when Shattered Armor, or maybe Canera, I don't remember which era it was, or Motre, but eventually someone gave me
Trade.
Skirmish.
Yeah.
Someone gave me Skirmish, and of course they knew I was dual corping. I never hid that, and that it was kind of nice to have because it allowed for additional SRP that I could do. So I started moving into Feroxes and Hurricanes and occasionally Maelstroms Triage.
So we did some crazy Maelstrom shit.
Yeah.
Once
People
or
doubt
twice.
the autocannon mail, and those people are full of it. As long as you understand your ranges, you know what to look at their ships for tracking, and as long as you try, to transversal match, you can make almost anything work against anything in this game. And when you do that with Maelstroms, you end up destroying a lot.
Yeah.
And at some point, without even asking, I was made a Strat Op FC by Shattered, and that's when things started to go downhill in Brave for me. At this time, this was just after my corp had been evicted from a C4, and we moved to a new C4. But at this point, I believe I was made Strat Op FC, and that's when I started becoming like pretty unhappy with things.
I say this a lot about people that I know in Brave who are FCs about that change. And that's a common theme where you're a skirmish FC, and so things are really easy and light for you. It's like you go out there, you fly fun ships, you do fun fleets, and there's not really a whole lot of pressure on you as far as like from leadership to do things that are you would consider like a space job. Like, hey, we need you to go toast this constellation. We need you to go hit this structure. We have timers, we have objectives, things like that. We have expectations of you. When you're a skirmish FC, it's just like, here's the keys to the car. It's the crappy car. So if you wreck it, we don't really care. Just try and bring it back in one piece. What I hear people say is that when they make that change, it starts to not be fun anymore. And again, that's because you're driving the car that you have to like be really extra careful on. You can't drive it in a fun way anymore. And if you get a scratch on it, your parents are going to be really upset with you. So I definitely felt that way when I became like a Strat Op FC. And even though I was always like looking to climb that ladder further, I guess I didn't realize like it just meant there was going to be more work involved, and that doesn't make the game so much fun anymore.
I can definitely expand on that. Am I supposed to drive freeze?
No, you're good.
All right. Sorry, my computer
expand away.
But for me, my two priorities always, actually, I'm gonna say three. One is never waste people's time. Two is try and always have fun with people, and then third, try and get a lot of ship kills. Those are the three things that I made my priorities in.
That's
a lot
the
of the
ingredients to a great fleet, isn't it?
Yeah, and then sometimes being a Strat Op FC doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. So I really disliked that. And then another thing is that I was sometimes the word exposed has too negative of a connotation, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that I was exposed to all of the other people in Legacy who were in kind of FC discords.
Yeah.
And the things that I saw, I was just like, I don't want to, I like to protect the guilty. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not going to give any names, but there are people who are in positions that I felt were saying things that were like, you should know better. Kind of like that word in a nutshell, or that saying.
Yeah.
And it's okay not to know those things. I'm a firm believer that if someone shouldn't feel bad about not knowing something. But it's like, if you tell someone how they're going to mess something up in exactly the way that you see them doing it, and then they go ahead and do it, and then just being exposed to that a lot is just, it makes you feel like you don't even want to support them.
Yeah.
And
I
it's just exposed to that a
get
lot.
It. Yeah.
That really turned me off from, frankly, just being in Brave. It's not the only reason, but that was definitely a substantial reason, was just a lot of the people Brave has chosen to be allies with.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly kind of my rise through Brave was very similar to yours in that I arrived there and was like, I'm just going to be a crazy tackle pilot and that's all I'm going to do. And then I was scouting for fleets, and then when you scout for fleets a lot, it teaches you a lot about how to FC. And then you step up to FCing, and it went very well. And I've got a very solid FC record, and I kind of kept getting promoted up and up. And eventually I ended up as was it full FC? I think it was. It was like the Mildir, and then the second in command, and then there was me and one other guy on that level. And I mean, I think I only ever pinged one strat-op in my entire time in Brave. I could, I would go along and FC things and kind of secondary and, that kind of stuff. And, I would frequently end up FCing stuff, but, I was never big on... I feel like a lot of the problem that I have with it is that the actual mechanics of Sov warfare are just dull. Like, there is an intrinsic... there will be a lot of time wasting and fights that aren't fun and shit that isn't contested that you have to do it anyway. There's a lot of that happens. And so it's like, it's tough to put a lot of the blame there on organizations inside the game, where you're like, okay, a lot of that is to do with game mechanics to some extent. But then there is the flip side of it, where eventually the people that you want to promote active people. So the people that are active in doing a lot of these things that are quite dull and don't end up in a lot of fights end up being the guys that kind of want to be in charge of things for the sake of being in charge of things, rather than the guys that are looking for good, fun content. And, your reason for being there isn't because you want to be the guy that everyone else has to say thanks FC to. Your reason for being there is you want a great fight. And that you're really good at doing that. So it's kind of this weird way that Eve has, in that eventually the most active guys in doing the Sov warfare, not so fun mechanics stuff, are going to end up being the guys who are doing kind of the big important fights, where you actually want the dude who's, there for the combat. So it's, I don't know. I feel like I kind of like went off on a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, I do feel it's like one of these things where it's like, it's tough to put it entirely on one single alliance or like, any of the game entities, but there are definitely things you could change, I think.
When you're AFK, when you have like sort of AFK lazy leadership, and they don't want to like have to actively manage the organization they're the leadership of. They will take the person who will do that for them, whether or not that person manages it effectively, whether or not they're good at it, whether or not it makes everyone happy, as long as basically, as an example, as long as the ISK keeps flowing in and the membership keeps flowing in and they have a positive delta, they don't really care if it's toxic leadership. They don't really care if it's, they're not going to gain ground. Or if they're not going to stand independently.
I would say it's difficult. It's also difficult because when you talk about the organizations in the scale of EVE Online, it's like it just requires an awful lot of attention from a leadership team. And, it's just a video game. Like, you can't expect people to devote their entire lives to it. So it's like, I absolutely can't blame people for being AFK and for kind of, It's just it's also to some extent, if you are going to be AFK, you need to kind of take your hands off the wheel, let somebody else take over, and come back if interest kind of is there for you. And it's certainly, I don't know, I feel like we've diverted a bit, and we're kind of talking about AFK leadership more than the specifics of Baller's case. But anyway, so continue, please, Baller.
I mean, I guess I can go into then a couple. I guess I can say strat ups I did. There was one of the ones that I loved the most was it was back when Skill Yourself and Fraternity, they were all pushing into Impasse hard, like it was just infested with citadels. And there was one Saturday morning when there was an anchor timer coming out. It was by Fraternity. It was a Saturday morning, so I was around. And we were looking, and there was no FCs on, so I was like, people were like, "Are we forming for this?" And I was like, "All right, I mean, I'll try and put up a Jackdaw fleet." I was back when I was a skirmish FC at the end of that, and what was on grid eventually was Skill Yourself Lokis. There was a Fraternity Ferox fleet. There was a separate bomber fleet, and then I think there was some other smaller fleet on grid too, and eventually I got convoed by some test guy who was saying, I don't think we can bridge in. There's too many of them. We're outformed. So I kind of gauge my fleet's interest. I tell him this might not work, but if you guys want to do this, we can give it a try. And I ran it exactly like a Talwar fleet. I ran that Astra House from 100%, hull all the way down to about 15% through just booshing and specific warpins and dodging bombers and that's the pinpoint nature that I miss about Boosh fleets the most is the fact that I could look at the grid, identify specific portions of it that are like open when Lokis are going to be out of range and the Feroxes aren't quite in range, and looking at just the grid that way. And even though we didn't destroy it, like people had an incredible amount of fun just booshing around for about 30 minutes. And that was, I don't know if either of you were there, but that was
I was. It was incredible. It was like, just it was like a Tal War fleet with an incredibly hostile grid to deal with.
And then you could tell just how horribly uncoordinated they were. I don't know if there's a language barrier between Skill U and Frat, but there was no coordination between them. Because all you have to do on that kind of fleet is you have to zone it. You have to just put one fleet top and bottom of the Astra, and then just spread out just a little bit, and you can kind of just zone everything out. And eventually that's what they did, but they really didn't realize that for about 30, 40 minutes. But it was an awesome fleet.
It just goes to show you that you don't have to match number to number. You don't have to N+1 to be effective.
You truly don't.
If you know what you're doing and you have the talent or the skill, you can manage to take an Astra down like that, or a Fortizar, without having just N+1 or like, the direct counter with the direct numbers. Like, and that's what I appreciate most about your fleets, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I appreciate you hearing that, and it's about preparation and execution, like the most. Like you got to be adaptable. You got to anticipate what your needs are going to be, and then you actually have to apply those tools in the moment, and that's what I think is probably one of my strongest skills.
All right, so let's bring ourselves more up to date then. So what happened to Baller? What happened to Valasius after this point?
All right.
You're a straight up FC. You're not loving the space jobs.
Why did you leave?
All right. No, we're not. We're actually gonna back one up just so we can go
right.
in timeliness. We're gonna go why I left Pospy, and this was extremely difficult for me to do. I was very emotional about it, but basically there was basically just me FCing, and that when you do that for so many years, it adds a certain weight on your shoulders, because if you're not there when a fleet's shown up that could be fight, you feel personally responsible for people not getting content. And it was just like that for so long, and I was so frustrated that I couldn't ever get anybody else to really step up. And eventually I just had to cut myself off. I was like, I'm not enjoying this anymore because too much of this is always on me. And it sucked because I turned my back on people who were so incredibly loyal to me, who loved my fleets, who loved everything that I did, and turning your back on that was, that hurt for a while, and but I felt I had to do it because there was just other things in the game I wanted to accomplish. I didn't want to live in a C4 anymore. I wanted to just get different exposure and opportunity. So eventually, I joined a corp called Did He Say Jump, a low-sec alliance. I kind of took a leap. I ran with Predator Elite in one fleet, and I was like, all right, these guys seem to be competent, so I literally just went with it. I had a lot of offers. I hope that doesn't make me sound like a dick, but I did have around 9 or 10 offers.
It's completely understandable that you would have a lot of offers. You're an incredibly talented FC and just a lovely person that smells nice. I assume.
I could blush. Eventually, I just took a limb. I wanted to do something new. I wanted to try getting out of wormholes. So eventually, I just joined Did He Say Jump, which turned into a dock workers, and the doctrines there in lowsec are very much so different than in wormhole space, where you don't have to deal with mass restrictions. But I got to FC dread bombs for the first time. I got to FC faction battleships like brawling, like Lashak, Balgar, and Vindy, that kind of stuff. I got to learn how to use blap dreads.
Very cool.
Blap dreads. The idea is like when you Vindy web, and you don't use this casual hot gun stuff now. You use cap gun dreads on Vindy web targets, and you just two-shot them. So I got to really learn, that kind of the game. And I'm having a ton of fun with them. I'm still there. I love it.
So you're a kind of, what is it, low sec pirate, I guess would be.
Well, it's
how would you describe what you do?
Base out of low sec. However, I would say we're highly mobile. For example, we uprooted everyone and went to a wormhole for 2.5 weeks or 2 weeks with a Kikimora fleet, and we just went around nullsec diving. And
right, just to run out of a wormhole.
Yeah, we just found a wormhole.
Okay.
So we already had it set up. We moved in, one of men's shields, Kikis, and we just whaled. And in 2 weeks, we lost 3 bill and destroyed 60, which I was pretty proud of. I was happy with that. And then nowadays, we are in Curse, which I don't want to go into too many details, but I mean, anything that's on the kill board is public. So, I mean,
yeah,
you can look at what's being ganked. You can look at our fights. We've been having some great fights with zealots. We fought off fed up Gilas in a pretty good fight, and then we kind of wrecked a little bit on Severance Macarials, which I think they're gonna come back pretty soon because I think they want revenge for that fight. I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that in a salty way. You want a round 2 after an opportunity like that.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the good fights.
Yep. So that's kind of what's going on in the world of Valasius. And then shortly after I left Pospey, maybe about 2 or 3 months later is when I left Brave, and there's a lot of reasonings to that, and I didn't give any of them to anybody who asked me. So I'm willing to speak to a little bit of it, which you guys can expand on further if you want.
I remember when I talked to you and you were like, I'm not in Brave anymore. And I remember just thinking in the back of my head, like, I don't even need to ask him to know why. Like, there's enough reasons. I don't need to ask him.
I want to ask.
Okay, fair enough. But I just wanted to point out, like, it wasn't like there were just enough reasons that I knew whatever reason you had was a good reason. That's all.
It was definitely compounding of a bunch of things. I spoke a little bit earlier, was being exposed to just certain kinds of people in the coalition that I'm okay with someone being bad, but it's like they didn't think they were.
Yeah.
And many of them were.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to invite 250 units on my forward desire, but I mean, so be it. And that was one of the reasons. Another is that I kind of hated the idea that we were just blued everyone around us. That's Brave is the most fun it can be when it's just surrounded by enemies, or in wartime. Yeah. When you're 5 jumps from Pandemic Horde and Fade, or when Skill Yourself is invading. And and I understand that maybe the way nullsec is played is that you need to defend your crab lands and build up your super fleet and all that, but I just don't. I feel like the everyday fun is more important than the impending doom, and
You're
the everyday fun was
so right.
sacrificed by
Yeah.
this whole we need to blue up and secure our homeland. It's just not the direction that I think that alliance should be going.
We all agree on that.
And if it means you get evicted, so be it. The everyday fun is more important than an eviction you get once every 6 months or whatever.
Then you go back to low sec. You have good fights there. People still want to come fight you. It's I fully agree on this. I feel that
they don't. I think it's in there.
I mean, this is true. I think for everybody that like you're having the most fun when there is the most content for you to do in the video game you're playing. So it's just
It's in there. It's in the recruiting advertisement. The most fun per hour in the game. They value fun per hour over safety and numbers. They value fun per hour over, according to the recruitment, they should value fun per hour over all other things in the game. And that value, I think, is diminished over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they never got out of Tech 1 battle cruisers, even if they just or Tech 1 battleships, even if they never left that, I still and they wouldn't be able to fund hack fleets for SRP. I still think Brave would be in a more fun place.
I agree.
Yeah. It's one of these things where it's like I can understand. I mean, Brave is a large organization and always has been. Almost since their inception, they grew very, very quickly, I think. And as you very correctly said, that in order for them to play the kind of the big SOV games, the way that the game works, it makes more sense to have, your crab lands, to have alliances, to have coalitions, to have blues and secure yourself and, do these things that you're supposed to do, like rent moons and have buybacks and build supers and show up to stratops and have SRP, all of these kind of things that are expected of a big alliance. That is because it's essentially the way that you have to operate, dictated by the boundaries of the game. But yeah, you certainly can say that something is lost about
specialness.
Yeah. Something is lost when you have to start playing those big friendship games. And there's definitely something kind of more pure about the idea of it just being, we are on our own, come and fight us, because that's the reason we exist.
Yeah.
You could even say that, you could expand on what EVE University is doing, over in PC9 and Syndicate or their other campuses. Like Brave could do, because they're larger, a more enhanced version of that. So I think
I don't know much about that. But give me the short version of what are they doing?
They just have different campuses around New Eden, and they just live in NPC Null. In this one specific campus, they have a bunch of people living in Syndicate, and they just kind of teach new bros the game and put out fun fleets and roams together. I don't think they ever do anything serious, but if Brand could if Brave took what EVE Uni is doing just a couple steps further, I think it would be one of the most popular alliances in the game, or the most popular.
I fought them recently. We had a connection like 2 jumps from their staging, and they really are like that. They're just kind of there on their own. If you want to come fight us, come fight us. That's what we're here for. And we did. We went and fought them, and they brought the fight to us, and they lost, and they were good sports about it, and everyone had fun. And there is something like, I don't know what the word is, not reminiscent, not nostalgic about it, but there's something like valuable there.
You're definitely right.
We all sound a bit sad talking about what we'd like Brave to be, and I think that it's important for our listeners to know that like the 3 of us here spent a lot of time in that alliance, and we invested ourselves in it heavily as FCs and leadership, and we wanted to see it grow into this thing that we're not seeing it grow into now. And so I think that's why a lot of times in our podcasts we end up talking about like the things that we miss. I
also wouldn't be like, I don't feel overly critical in any way. Like, I feel like the problems that Brave have are definitely there, but it's kind of an inevitable consequence of kind of the game being what it is. And human life being what it is, and you can't
True.
expect people to be there at all times. You can't expect the right guy always to be in the right position. This is just the way life goes, and Eve is is nothing if not a very good simulation of reality. So it's I think there are a lot of people in Brave who absolutely like personify what Brave is and what it means, and that new bro friendly, stay classy attitude. And there's a lot of guys there who absolutely do live that, and so I don't want to in any way feel like I'm kind of like I'm being too critical, because
It's true.
there's an awful lot of
You're
good
right.
people, and I
You're right.
think Brave is not that far away from being that thing that we all kind of want it to be, where it is that constant content, just good fun, no saltiness or bad feelings towards anybody. You come here, we fight, we all have a good time. That's living the dream as far as Eve goes, and you have to give Brave credit, so much credit, just for trying to be that alliance in the first place, and to continuing to do it now. So yeah, for all the saltiness, like we all definitely still see the benefits of it, and in fact, it's kind of we're all still chasing that same dream.
Yeah, that's true. We are. I am definitely still chasing that sort of dream.
I do have to add, because if I don't, I don't know if I get a chance to do it. The other big reason on leaving Brave was when I joined Dock Workers, which is it's the Alliance. It's today. But, there was I saw a lot more opportunity in shooting people Brave or Blue with, and because I never wanted to break the trust, I wanted to honor the trust that was given to me to be able to dual corp. I was what I wanted to do was actually shoot a lot of Brave Blues, not necessarily Brave, but people Brave or Blue with, because
Yeah.
of just how much obnoxiousness I saw in those coordination discords, that I was just like, I gotta do it, and turning my back on people who, just like Potsby, people who showed me admiration, loyalty, and the time commitment. The people who would say never miss a baller fleet, people who would say some of the nicest things you can possibly say, to someone in a video game or even in real life, and leaving that too was also emotional and definitely very difficult.
Oh yeah, it's the reason. Like I don't know about you guys, but like I got into FCing because I was looking for good fights, but I stayed FCing because it just feels good. It feels good to be that guy, calling it out and doing well and making everybody have a good time.
Definitely.
So something that our listeners may not know is that my name is not the same as I call myself here on this podcast. My name in the game used to be Who the Fuck. I'm not going to tell you what it is now. Uh, CCP made me change it because Who the Fuck's offensive. I'm not going to argue that point here. But
Well, I mean, you should
my
just harden the fuck up.
yeah,
I always called you Who the Puck in Brave. I was like, to me, that was part of Stay Classy. So I would always say Who the Puck. And you would always be like, it's not my name, Poller.
In my current alliance, there is a dude who used to be in Brave, and he found out that I used to be in Brave, and he's like, "Oh man, I really enjoyed Brave. I loved being there. There was like Caracal fleets going all the time, and they were really good FCs, and I really missed like going out in Caracal fleets like on a daily basis." And I was like, "What was the name of the FC?" And he's like, "I can't remember. I think it was like WTF or something like that." And he always used to ping like, he always used to bring like WTF Caracal's FTW, and I'd be like,
Did you tell him?
I did tell him, yeah.
Oh, please tell
me
me you told him. Yeah,
I did. I told him, I was like, that was me. He was like, oh man, that was a lot of fun. And I was like, thanks. That means a lot to me.
Oh,
Kind of
awesome.
dragged out my own ego boost there. Like, but yeah, it's
You gotta take those moments when they come along. They're rare enough.
It's the best thing when someone's like reminiscent about your FCing in the game. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've this is as expected, has been. The intro has lasted for like basically the entire podcast. I don't know. Do we want to talk any more about like leaving Brave and leaving Pospey? I feel like, was there anything to add there, Baller?
I think that was pretty conclusive. I mean, to me, Also one of the more important parts I mean, I know I used the words loyalty earlier to the people who showed me, but I also think it's important to remember that we're all paying to play this game, and that I'm paying to get the content that I want to do. So I'm not gonna, be unhappy in a place if I can find the content that I want to do elsewhere. And that's the end of the day. The big things is that there's other things that I just wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is very important, and people sometimes need to remember, like, if it's all starting to feel like a space job and you're not having fun, go and find the fun somewhere else, because there's plenty of it out there to be had.
You pay for this game? I'm a
I'm
worm holder, by the way.
There we go. There we go. I feel like I planted the seed. That's what I'm gonna say. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm plexing with the bank I sit on, but.
All right. Well, being as we're already kind of like have run over the full time, and we had like a list of stuff that we were going to talk about that we obviously didn't get to. I'm just gonna like a couple of quick questions, just like if you're a new guy, if you're starting FCing, where's a good place to go and have fun? What's a Ball of Tom recommendation? Like, who should you go fight?
Well, the first thing is unless you plan on FCing yourself, you have to be in a group. So I even want to back up before even what you were saying, Vargan. So
Sure.
Unless you want to solo PvP, you do have to have a group to be with. The first couple times you do it, definitely, if you can have someone experienced just kind of be there with you, even just to navigate you and point you in the right direction of where you should travel. That is like kind of like pretty critical in my opinion, because if you don't know where to go to get good fights or get any fight, then everybody's just going to kind of be bored and you're going to be annoyed that you're not able to find anything. So have someone experienced be there with you. And then my final bit of advice, can I swear on this? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure. Fuck yeah.
All right. People will call out your bullshit. So don't be afraid to be open that you don't know something. For example, the other day, the other month rather, I was fighting Armor Artie Mercurials. I had no idea if Zealots at 100 kilometers would actually be able to sig tank or not. I didn't know. And turns out is when they sig match, they can. And I was open about it beforehand, and I was open about it afterwards. It's like I didn't know they could do that. And it is complete. No one's gonna think you're weak by not knowing something, as long as you're open and honest about it. So that's my advice.
Such good advice. That's such good advice, and something that so many FCs could learn from.
Don't be afraid to be wrong. Ask your logi how your ships were, rather how reps were holding at different points during the fleet. So how was it at the start, how was it at the medium, and how was it at the end? And eventually, over time, you will start to develop what you can and cannot tank, just based off intuition on the past experiences of what your logi provides. So at the end of every fleet, ask your logi how were reps holding at different points. That's me my last bit of advice.
What about you, Varg? You must have advice.
Yeah, what Baller said. Honestly, like my advice actually is unsurprisingly linked to a malediction, as everything Sunpow seems to be for me. But is before you even start FCing, just scout so much stuff. Just be like the guy who is in front of the fleet all of the time. You will learn so much about what it means to be a good combat FC just by seeing how your FC responds to the information you give him, and then seeing how his decisions pan out. So, like, either way, if you give him the information and he makes the wrong call and he wrecks the fleet, you've just learned how to not wreck your fleet in a similar situation. And if you give him the information and he absolutely destroys the enemy fleet based on the information you've given him, you know what to do if that happens again. And it's like you can learn so much without being in a position of pressure where you're like, oh God, I'm going to lose the whole fleet or whatever's going to happen. Because all you're risking is it's like a scepter. It's the most survivable ship in EVE. You can just run away whenever you need to. You can sit there and watch. You can dive in and help. So yeah, that would be my little bit of if you want to get started on FCing advice, is be a good scout.
Well, who Varg and I give our input. What about you? Who? What's your advice?
Yeah. Come on.
Listen to the people in your
Tables have
fleet.
turned.
Just because you're the FC, just because you're the one that's in charge, doesn't mean the people in your fleet don't also know what they're doing. Listen to the people in your fleet. Listen to what they're telling you. You know, don't make them be in charge, obviously. But just because you're the one telling everyone what to do doesn't mean you can't have input from those people and take what they're saying and what's the word? Reflect it back, basically.
I know we're doing outros, but I got to expand on it if you'll allow me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
There are people in my corp who know so much more things than me, and as long as you understand to leverage their knowledge at the right points, that's what's really kick things off, and that's when you're going to start to see fleets gel together. You're going to rely on different people for different things. They're going to feel empowered to make certain calls for you. For example, like if you're not sure which dread to shoot, if you're not sure which thing you need to nude out first, then it's like, well, if you can rely on people who have that kind of experience. And this is what I'm gonna shout out my boys in Sash, a corp in in my alliance, and they really have such a wide knowledge of expertise when it comes to things that I just don't know enough about. And it's important to be completely open about the stuff you don't know, or people will call you out and they'll know it.
It's such a big game. You can't possibly know all of the things and keep track of it all. You if you want to be like a good leader and a good FC, you have to do this. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right, so
let's close up. Yeah, go on.
We've been here a while. We'll be here for hours if we keep going. Like,
you didn't even start asking questions yet. We just did the fucking intro. That's it. That's all it's been. It's been an hour of intro.
Part 2.
It's good.
Part 2. Sometime we'll do a part 2, eh?
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, for sure. Real quickly, we're going to do the kill mail.
There we go.
It's a tradition now. Right, so your first ever loss as Valasius, I've gone back to the long ago in history past. I found your first ever loss. And I just want to see if I've got this right, because what I think has happened here is you were mining in HiSec in an Osprey with a single heavy missile launcher on it, and you got killed by a guy in a Tristan.
So
I'm curious to know if you can actually remember this.
It does sound familiar. So this is 2009.
It is. It is long ago.
I didn't reference it at the intro because I only started PvPing in 2015, and that's really what I really focus on. But looking at it, the Osprey did have a mining bonus back in the day, and if you click related on the Zkill link for this, there's also a Badger. So I think what happened is I was mining. I got some guy jet can flipped me, so I was like, "Well, I'm gonna shoot this little frigate," and then I get owned by Tristan in my Osprey, and then I'm like, "Oh no, I gotta get my loot." So I get in my Badger at the station, warp back to the site. The guy still has limited aggression on me, or whatever that HiSec mechanic is, and he just tackles the Badger. So I lost 2 ships to the same can flipper.
What a hero. And I think the lesson that we can learn here is that from such humble beginnings come FCs on the tier of Valasius and Baller Tom, who is now famed far and wide for the magnificence of his baller fleets.
Thank you.
So, yeah. We all start off somewhere, and that's quite a hilarious start, so bravo.
Yeah. It was good to talk to you, Baller. Truly.
Yeah, dude, I love hanging out with both of you. Who I think I was a mentor for a while, and then Varg. I'll say there's no one I'd rather be stuck in a foxhole with than you. And I mean that in that you're always the support FC is a stupid title. You were just always someone who would just make calls that are useful to the rest of the fleet to hear.
Yeah.
That wouldn't normally be said. And that is I think one of your greatest qualities when it comes to Eve. Sceptering is number 1. That's what I said is number 2.
I like to be that little voice on the shoulder.
I backseated someone recently, and I did the same thing, and I didn't have a word for it. I didn't have a term for it, and I was like, I just Vargrened that guy. Everyone was like, what? I just Vargrened that guy. I helped him. I Vargrened him. Like, all right.
Anyway, let's close this off.
Close off. So it was good talking to you guys. Thank our listeners for tuning in. Make sure you tune in for episode 10 of Primary Target. And until then, fly whoever you feel like flying. Don't listen to me. See ya.